The interstellar vessel Vektran Spear drifted silently through the expanse of uncharted space, its sleek hull cutting a path through a nebula of shimmering turquoise and gold. Captain Xelra, her obsidian-like scales faintly catching the dim bridge lights, sat composed in her chair, her claws tapping softly against the armrest. The crew of the Vektran Spear, a collection of diverse alien species, was on high alert, their mission delicate and fraught with potential danger. They had successfully intercepted and subdued a group of human children from a remote colony, a strategic move designed to pressure the Terran Federation into negotiating for trade concessions. Yet, despite their success, a sense of unease permeated the ship. It wasn't fear of retaliation. The humans, while resourceful and persistent, were not known for reckless aggression when their offspring were endangered. No, the unease came from something subtler, an unspoken tension that lingered in the air like an electrical charge. Captain Xelra dismissed it as post-mission nerves, though the gnawing sensation in her gut suggested otherwise. "Status report," she demanded, her voice cutting through the low hum of the ship's engines. Lieutenant Ralix, her second-in-command, glanced up from his console. His multifaceted eyes reflected a kaleidoscope of colors as he spoke. "All systems are nominal. The cargo, the human juveniles, has been secured in the detention bay. Life support and containment fields are stable. And their behavior?" Xelra pressed. She knew humans had a peculiar affinity for chaos, a trait that made them both fascinating and unpredictable. Ralix hesitated, his multifaceted eyes narrowing as if processing an unsettling thought, the faintest shiver running through his elongated frame, betraying a deep sense of foreboding. "They are quiet. Too quiet. It's unsettling." Xelra's eyes narrowed. Humans, especially their young, were rarely described as quiet. Their boundless energy and irrepressible curiosity often led them to explore, question, and disrupt, qualities that seemed at odds with the eerie calm now displayed, leaving Xelra to wonder what calculations lay behind their silence. She rose from her chair, her movements fluid and deliberate. "I'll inspect the cargo myself." The detention bay was a sterile, utilitarian space, its walls lined with shimmering energy barriers. Behind one of these barriers sat the captured children. There were 5 of them, ranging in age from perhaps 7 to 13 by human standards. They huddled together, their expressions calm but watchful. Too calm, Xelra thought. "Identify yourselves," she commanded, her voice resonating with authority. The eldest, a girl with dark, piercing eyes and a defiant tilt to her chin, stepped forward. "Why?" she asked, her tone devoid of fear. "You'll just call us what you want anyway." Xelra's scales rippled with irritation. "You will answer," she growled. The girl smirked, an expression that sent a chill down Xelra's spine. "We're just kids," she said, her voice carrying an edge of mockery. "What could we possibly do to scare you?" Xelra's jaw tightened. She turned to leave but paused at the threshold. Something about the girl's composure, the way the younger children seemed to draw strength from her presence, unsettled her. Back on the bridge, she ordered heightened surveillance on the detainees. Hours passed, and the ship continued its course through the void. The surveillance feeds showed the children talking in hushed tones, their expressions shifting between intense focus and bursts of laughter. Laughter. On a hostile vessel, after being abducted. Xelra's unease grew. Ralix approached her console. "Captain, I've analyzed the surveillance footage. The children are planning something. They've been using a game of some kind to share information without speaking openly. It's ingenious." "Explain," Xelra demanded, her claws digging into the armrest. Ralix brought up a recording. The children were seated in a circle, rolling a small, battered ball between them with deliberate precision. Each pass seemed to carry an unspoken rhythm, their eyes locking momentarily as if sharing silent agreements. The motion was almost hypnotic, a deceptive calm that hinted at layers of intent beneath the surface, as if each pass of the ball carried unseen stakes that could unravel everything if ignored. Each time the ball changed hands, the child who received it spoke a single word. To an untrained observer, it seemed like nonsense, but Ralix's analysis revealed a pattern. "They're using the ball to dictate the sequence of their communication," he explained. "Each word is part of a larger code. They're strategizing." Xelra's tail lashed behind her. What are they planning? Unknown. But their confidence suggests they believe they can escape. The captain's eyes glinted with determination. Increase the guard detail. I want them watched at all times. The next day brought the first sign of trouble. The detention bay systems began to glitch, energy barriers flickering intermittently. Engineers scrambled to identify the cause but found no clear explanation. Meanwhile, the children remained eerily composed, their quiet conversations continuing. They're doing this, Ralix insisted, his mandibles clicking with agitation. They've found a way to interfere with our systems. Xelra frowned. Impossible. They have no access to our technology. Ralix hesitated, then said, humans have an uncanny ability to adapt. They see connections where others do not. It's as if their minds thrive on chaos. Xelra's mind raced. She had studied humans extensively before the mission, fascinated by their improbable rise to prominence among the stars. Their physiology was unremarkable, their technology middling by galactic standards. Yet, time and again, they defied expectations. They were survivors, innovators, and perhaps most disturbingly, they were unpredictable. That unpredictability soon manifested in a way that left the crew reeling. During a routine shift change, the children staged their escape. They used the flickering energy barriers to their advantage, timing their movements with uncanny precision. The guards were caught off guard, their weapons neutralized with makeshift tools the children had fashioned from scraps. By the time Xelra arrived at the detention bay, the children were gone. The captain's fury was palpable as she barked orders, her voice echoing through the corridors. The ship went into lockdown, every corridor sealed, every sensor tuned to detect the fugitives. But the children were elusive, slipping through the ship like ghosts. Hours turned into a grueling chase. The children outwitted their pursuers at every turn, using their small size and agility to navigate the labyrinthine vessel. They sabotaged key systems, plunging sections of the ship into darkness and creating diversions that sent the crew scrambling. Xelra's frustration boiled over. They're just children, she roared. How are they doing this? Ralix's voice was grim. They're not just children. They're human children. Their species is uniquely gifted at turning weakness into strength. The realization struck Xelra with an intensity that seemed to reverberate through her very core, the weight of it magnified by the sheer audacity of the humans entrusting children to dismantle a mission meticulously planned by seasoned tacticians. It wasn't just their adaptability, it was their ability to transform innocence into a weapon of strategy that left her reeling. The Terran Federation hadn't sent negotiators or warships because they hadn't needed to. The humans had let their children handle the situation, knowing full well what they were capable of. As the ship's systems continued to fail and the crew's morale plummeted, Xelra faced a stark choice. She could continue the futile pursuit, risking further damage to her ship and crew, or she could confront the truth. The children had already won. The Vektran Spear teetered on the edge of chaos. Warnings pulsed through the ship's corridors, the steady tones merging with the hurried steps of crew members rushing to restore control. Systems sputtered and dimmed, casting parts of the ship into fragmented shadows that seemed to pulse with the ship's distress. Captain Xelra's voice cut through the cacophony as she barked orders, her composure now a thin veneer masking the simmering frustration beneath. Seal all non-essential compartment. Focus resources on containment and diagnostic. These children will not win. The bridge staff scrambled to execute her commands, their movements sharp and efficient despite the rising tension. But the crew's confidence was fraying. What had started as a routine mission was devolving into an unthinkable debacle, all at the hands of 5 human children. Ralix's mandibles clicked nervously as he approached Xelra. Captain, the juveniles have neutralized 3 more security drones. They've accessed maintenance conduits and appear to be heading for engineering. Xelra's tail lashed against the deck. Engineering? What could they possibly want there? Unknown, but their actions are coordinated. This isn't random mischief. Xelra's mind churned. Humans were known for their unorthodox thinking, their ability to turn the simplest tools into weapons or solutions. On the frontier world of Orinax, Human settlers had once repelled a Shindar raiding party using only modified agricultural drones and irrigation systems, a feat that became a cautionary tale across the galaxy. If these children had a plan, and it was becoming increasingly clear they did, then they couldn't be underestimated. Divert additional personnel to engineering. I want a full lockdown in that sector. She turned her piercing gaze toward the tactical display. And someone find me a vulnerability we can exploit. They are children, not tactical geniuses. There must be a weakness. But even as she gave the order, a part of her knew the truth. These were not ordinary children. They were Terran. In the cramped confines of a maintenance conduit, the children moved with practiced efficiency. Their leader, the eldest girl, who the others called Sam, crawled ahead, her sharp eyes scanning for obstacles or traps. Behind her, the younger ones followed in single file, their small hands steady despite the ship's sporadic shudders. Almost there, Sam whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the ship's systems. Stay close and keep quiet. The youngest, a boy no older than 7, bit his lip to suppress a giggle. This is just like the tunnels back home, he whispered back. Sam shot him a warning look but couldn't suppress a small smile. Not quite. Those tunnels didn't have angry lizard captains chasing us. The group reached a junction and paused. Sam pulled a crude map from her pocket, a patchwork of observations and guesswork drawn on a scrap of cloth salvaged from a ship's supply bag. Each mark on it represented careful reconnaissance during their capture, every line a testament to the group's desperate ingenuity and shared resolve to outwit their captors. She traced a path with her finger, her brow furrowing in concentration. Engineering's through there, she said, pointing to a narrow vent. Once we're in, we stick to the plan. No improvising unless it's life or death. Got it? The others nodded solemnly. They had all grown up on the edges of Terran space, in colonies where survival often depended on ingenuity and teamwork. This was just another challenge, albeit a far more dangerous one. Back on the bridge, Xelra's frustration deepened. The tactical display revealed a web of maintenance conduits crisscrossing the ship, each offering a potential route or haven for the elusive children. The children's small size made them nearly impossible to track, and their sabotage was growing more sophisticated. Power fluctuations rippled through the ship as the juveniles bypassed security measures and rerouted energy flows. Captain, Ralix said, his voice strained. We've lost control of Subdeck 7. They've disabled environmental controls and vented the atmosphere in non-critical areas. Xelra's claws dug into the armrest of her chair. Are they trying to cripple us? It appears so. But there's more. Ralix hesitated, then added, they've overridden the internal sensors. We can't pinpoint their exact location anymore. The admission sent a ripple of unease through the bridge, reflected in the stiffened postures and furtive glances exchanged among the crew. Whispers of doubt crackled like static in the tense atmosphere, each officer acutely aware that their formidable vessel was being outmaneuvered by a group of juveniles. The weight of failure loomed over them, gnawing at their confidence. Xelra's tale stilled as she processed the implications. These children were systematically dismantling her ship's defenses. It wasn't just cunning, it was methodical. They're not acting like children, she muttered. They're acting like soldiers. In engineering, the children worked quickly. Sam directed the others with quiet authority, her confidence keeping them focused despite the high stakes. They had managed to evade the crew and bypass multiple security checkpoints, but this was the critical moment. Over here, she said, gesturing to a console. We need to disrupt their power distribution. If we can force a reset, it'll give us the opening we need. A boy with curly hair, Jacob, stepped forward, his hand steady as he began to dismantle the panel. I've got this. Cover me. Sam nodded and turned to the others. Keep an eye out. If anyone comes, we need to stall them. As Jacob worked, the others formed a makeshift barricade using loose equipment. Their faces were set with determination, their fear eclipsed by the urgency of their mission. They weren't just fighting for themselves, they were fighting for the countless Terran colonies that depended on them to survive. The crew of the Vektran Spear was closing in. Xelra had dispatched her most skilled operatives to engineering, their orders clear: subdue the juveniles at any cost. The corridors leading to the sector were a hive of activity as teams moved in, weapons drawn and shields raised. "We have them cornered," Ralix reported, his mandibles clicking with anticipation. "They won't escape this time." Xelra didn't respond. She stared at the tactical display, a gnawing doubt creeping into her thoughts. The humans had been underestimated from the start, and every misstep had only emboldened them. Were they truly cornered, or was this another ploy? As the operatives breached engineering, they were met with chaos. Lights flickered violently, casting jagged shadows across the walls, while machinery hissed and groaned, spitting bursts of steam that filled the air with a metallic tang. The constant screech of stressed gears and the acrid smell of burning circuits heightened the sense of chaos and urgency. The juveniles had rigged the area with makeshift traps, wires stretched across walkways, panels rigged to emit blinding flashes of light, and conduits spewing plumes of hot steam. In the center of the room, Sam and her team stood their ground. Jacob had finished his work on the console, and the power distribution system was teetering on the brink of collapse. Sam held a small device in her hand, her thumb poised over a button. "Stay back," she shouted, her voice cutting through the cacophony. "One step closer, and I fry your systems." The lead operative hesitated, his weapon trained on her. "You don't know what you're doing, kid. Stand down, and no one gets hurt." Sam's eyes burned with determination. "Try me." Xelra's voice crackled over the comms. "Enough. Stand down and negotiate." The operative glanced at his team, then lowered his weapon slightly. Sam didn't move, her thumb still hovering over the button. For a moment, the room was suspended in tense silence. "You think this is a game?" Xelra continued, her voice cold. "You think you can win?" Sam's expression hardened. "It's not about winning. It's about surviving. And we're better at it than you think." Xelra's claws tightened around the comms panel, the weight of her decisions pressing heavily on her mind. For the first time in her decorated career, she questioned her ability to outmaneuver an opponent who wielded sheer ingenuity as their greatest weapon. The children had turned her ship into a battlefield, and for the first time, she began to wonder if they might actually prevail. The Vektran Spear was unraveling. Each move by the children edged the ship closer to disaster, straining the crew as they struggled against relentless sabotage. In the dimly lit corridors leading to engineering, the air crackled with tension. Operatives moved cautiously, their weapons raised, each footstep echoing ominously. They'd encountered traps, simple yet effective creations that delayed their progress and heightened their apprehension. The children's ingenuity was turning the vast and technologically superior ship into an unpredictable maze. Captain Xelra watched the tactical display with grim determination, her claws tapping against the console. She could feel the pressure mounting. They were losing control of the situation. The children were cornered now, and she knew this would lead to one of two outcomes: recapture or utter disaster. "Ralix, status report," Xelra snapped. Her second-in-command's posture stiffened, his multifaceted eyes glinting with unease. "The operatives have breached the outer perimeter of engineering. Resistance is unusual. They're not engaging directly, Captain. They're stalling us." Xelra's eyes narrowed. "Stalling for what? Have we confirmed their objective?" "Not yet, Captain. But the power fluctuations they've caused suggest they're tampering with core systems. If they're targeting the reactor," Ralix hesitated, his multifaceted eyes darting between the reactor display and Xelra. The faintest tremor in his stance betrayed the weight of his doubt, as if he too questioned whether their efforts would be enough to regain control. "We need to stop them before they destabilize it." "Then stop them," Xelra growled, her frustration evident. "No more delays. Use whatever force necessary. They cannot be allowed to endanger this vessel." In engineering, the children worked as if they were one entity, their synergy born of necessity and a shared determination. Jacob's hands moved deftly over the exposed wires and panels, his focus unshakable. Sam stood beside him, her eyes darting between the others as she gave quiet, firm instructions. "They're closing in," one of the younger children whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Sam crouched beside her, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Stick to the plan. We've got this. What if they break through?" the child asked, her wide eyes reflecting the flickering lights. Sam's gaze softened, but her voice remained firm. Then we'll hold them off as long as we can. But right now, we're still in control. Trust me. The reassurance seemed to work, and the younger child nodded, returning to her task. Sam rose, her expression hardening as she turned her attention to Jacob. How much longer? A few more minutes, he replied, not looking up from his work. This ship's systems are a mess. I'm rerouting the power, but it's going to take time. Time we don't have, Sam muttered. She turned to another child. Set up more barricades. Use anything you can find. We need to slow them down. The younger children scrambled to obey, their small hands dragging loose equipment and discarded panels into makeshift barriers. The sound of footsteps and muffled voices grew louder in the distance, a stark reminder of the enemy closing in. The operatives reached the final bulkhead leading to engineering, their breaths quickened and sweat beading beneath their helmets. The toll of navigating the sabotaged corridors was evident in their cautious movements and the sharp, wary glances they exchanged, each one steeling themselves for the unknown waiting beyond the door. Xelra's voice crackled through their comms. Breach and secure. No mistakes. The lead operative nodded to his team, and they moved in unison, planting charges along the reinforced door. A low hum signaled the detonation, and the door buckled with a deafening roar. Smoke and debris filled the corridor as the team advanced, their visors filtering the haze. But what lay beyond the breach was not what they expected. Lights flickered erratically, casting jagged, shifting shadows across the walls. The erratic bursts of brightness illuminated bursts of steam hissing from ruptured conduits, and the low hum of overloaded circuits added a dissonant undertone to the chaos. Machinery groaned and hissed under the strain of sabotage. And in the center of the chaos, the children stood defiant behind their barricades, their expressions resolute. Stand down, the lead operative commanded, his voice amplified by his suit's external speakers. This is your final warning. Sam stepped forward, her small frame dwarfed by the operative's imposing figures. She held up the device in her hand, her thumb poised over the trigger. We're not afraid of you, she said, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. Leave now, or we take this whole section offline. The lead operative hesitated, his weapon trained on her. You're bluffing. Sam's eyes narrowed. Try me. Back on the bridge, Xelra watched the standoff unfold through the tactical feed. Her claws tapped against the console, her frustration mounting with each passing second. She could order her operatives to open fire, but the risk of collateral damage to the reactor was too great. And worse, she could see it in the children's eyes, they were willing to sacrifice themselves to achieve their goal. Captain, Ralix began cautiously, if we force a confrontation, we may compromise the entire section. The juveniles have positioned themselves to maximize the damage if we engage. I'm aware, Xelra snapped. Her mind raced for a solution, but the options were dwindling. These children weren't acting out of desperation, they were executing a plan. And so far, that plan was working. Prepare the auxiliary systems for a reactor shutdown, she ordered. If they're targeting the core, we'll cut them off before they can destabilize it. Ralix hesitated. And if that doesn't stop them? Xelra's gaze hardened. Then we'll see how far they're willing to go. In engineering, the tension reached a breaking point. The operatives advanced slowly, their weapons trained on the children, who stood firm behind their barricades. Sam's thumb hovered over the trigger, her resolve unshaken despite the weight of the moment. Her mind raced with thoughts of home, of the friends and family who had been left vulnerable by the invaders. This was bigger than her, bigger than all of them. The mission wasn't just about survival, it was about proving that humanity could not be broken. This is your last chance, the lead operative warned. Surrender now, and no one gets hurt. Sam didn't flinch. You don't get it, do you? This isn't about us. It's about everyone else you think you can bully. We're not going to let you win. Jacob's voice broke through the tension. It's ready. Sam's expression steeled. Everyone, fall back. The children moved as one, retreating deeper into engineering as Sam pressed the trigger. The console Jacob had been working on sparked violently, and the lights flickered before plunging the section into darkness. The operatives' visors adjusted instantly, but the sudden shift threw them off balance. A cacophony of noise erupted as machinery groaned and alarms blared, accompanied by the acrid stench of burning circuits and the oppressive heat radiating from ruptured conduits. The children's sabotage had triggered a controlled cascade failure, forcing the ship's systems into emergency protocols. The operatives scrambled to stabilize their footing as the floor vibrated beneath them. From the shadows, Sam's voice rang out. "You wanted to see what we could do. Here it is." The room shuddered as the reactor's output fluctuated wildly, and for the first time, Xelra felt a pang of doubt. It gnawed at her, a rare and unwelcome sensation, accompanied by the faint hum of unstable energy that seemed to vibrate through her scales. The overwhelming realization that these juveniles, mere children, had orchestrated such chaos left her questioning not just their ingenuity but her own failure to anticipate it. For a fleeting moment, the smell of ozone and the heat emanating from the strained systems around her felt like a prelude to the ship's demise, a possibility she had never before entertained. It gnawed at her, a rare and unwelcome sensation. How had these juveniles, mere children, managed to reduce her ship to this? She questioned not only their ingenuity but also her own judgment in underestimating them. The realization that she might be outmaneuvered filled her with a flicker of fear, one she quickly masked behind a hardened resolve. These weren't just children. They were human, and that made them the most dangerous adversaries she had ever faced. The Vektran Spear groaned under the strain of its failing systems. Lights strobed erratically, alarms pierced the air, and the hum of emergency protocols droned ominously through the corridors, amplifying the ship's growing desperation. Captain Xelra stood rigid on the bridge, her claws gripping the console tightly as she watched the tactical display. The weight of the situation pressed heavily on her, a mixture of anger and helplessness simmering beneath her composed exterior. She had never faced an opponent like this before, one so resourceful, so determined, and so unrelenting. The enormity of the moment gnawed at her, threatening to erode the confidence she had carefully built over years of command. The children had pushed her ship to its limits, and she knew the next moments would decide everything. "Ralix, status report," she barked. "Reactor output is fluctuating beyond safe thresholds," Ralix replied, his voice strained. "We've activated auxiliary systems, but the cascade failure is spreading. If we don't regain control soon," he didn't finish the sentence, but the implication was clear. Xelra's mind raced. The children weren't just improvising, they had meticulously planned every step. They had used the ship's size and complexity against it, turning its strengths into vulnerabilities. It was an infuriatingly human tactic. "Patch me through to engineering," she ordered. Ralix hesitated, then complied. The screen flickered, and the image of Sam appeared. She stood defiantly in the dim light of engineering, the device still in her hand. The younger children were behind her, their faces grim but resolute. "Captain," Sam said, her voice calm despite the chaos around her. "You know what happens next if you don't back off." Xelra's claws flexed, leaving faint marks on the console. "You've made your point, human. But if you destabilize the reactor, you'll die along with us." Sam's gaze didn't waver. "Maybe. But if it means stopping you from hurting anyone else, it's worth it." For a moment, the bridge was silent, save for the hum of failing systems. Xelra studied the girl's face, searching for hesitation, fear, or anything she could exploit. But all she saw was resolve. "You don't have to do this," Xelra said, her voice softer now. "You're children. This fight isn't yours. It became ours the moment you took us," Sam replied. "And it's not just about us. It's about everyone else you've taken, everyone else you've hurt. We're not going to let you do it again." Xelra's tail lashed once, then stilled. She could see no path forward that didn't end in catastrophe. The humans had forced her hand. Reluctantly, she took a deep breath and issued her command. "Stand down," she said. "Withdraw all operatives from engineering and restore power to their systems." Ralix's eyes widened in shock. "Captain." "Do it," Xelra snapped. "We've already lost this battle." The bridge crew hesitated, then began executing her orders. Xelra turned back to the screen. "You have what you wanted. Now stabilize my ship and get out." Sam nodded, her expression unreadable. We'll fix the reactor. But don't think this is over. The feed cut off, leaving Xelra to stare at the blank screen. Her claws clicked against the console as she processed the weight of her defeat. This wasn't just a tactical loss, it was a personal reckoning. The realization that a group of human children had unraveled her meticulously crafted strategies forced her to confront an uncomfortable truth. Her arrogance and rigid thinking had blinded her to the humans' ingenuity. The sting of defeat mingled with an odd respect for their resilience, and in that moment, Xelra vowed never to let her hubris cloud her judgment again. She had underestimated humanity, and it had cost her everything. In engineering, the children worked quickly to stabilize the reactor. Jacob's hands moved deftly over the controls, his earlier nerves replaced by a focused determination. Sam stood beside him, watching the readouts with a critical eye. Almost there, Jacob said. Just a few more adjustments. The younger children remained on lookout, their small bodies tense as they listened for any signs of betrayal. But the corridors remained quiet, the operatives retreating as ordered. Got it, Jacob said finally, stepping back from the console. Reactors stable. Sam exhaled, her shoulders relaxing slightly. Good. Let's move. They gathered their makeshift tools and supplies, their movements quick but purposeful. As they prepared to leave, Sam paused and looked back at the reactor. For a moment, she felt a pang of uncertainty. Had they done enough? Was this really over? Sam, one of the younger children asked, her voice breaking the silence. Sam turned back to her team, her resolve hardening. Let's go. On the bridge, Xelra watched the tactical display as the children made their way toward the hangar bay. The muted hum of the ship's systems barely masked her own thoughts, swirling with frustration and a begrudging admiration. The tactical display's glow reflected off her scales, a stark reminder of her defeat, as the faint scent of ozone from earlier disruptions lingered in the air, adding weight to the moment. Her pride burned, but beneath it was a flicker of something she hadn't felt in years: respect. It wasn't just their victory that struck her, it was the precision, the bravery, and the sheer audacity with which they had carried out their plan. The children's ability to adapt, to see opportunity in chaos, and to work together with unwavering determination spoke of a strength far beyond their years. Xelra couldn't help but marvel at their defiance, even as it stung to acknowledge her defeat. These children had done the impossible. They had faced overwhelming odds and won, not through brute force but through cunning, resolve, and an unyielding sense of justice. Captain, Ralix said hesitantly. What do we do now? Xelra didn't answer immediately. Her gaze remained fixed on the display until the children disappeared from view, their stolen shuttle launching into the void. We learn, she said finally. We learn to see what we've missed, their unity, their resourcefulness, and their ability to defy expectations. And we don't make the mistake of underestimating humanity again. As the Vektran Spear limped through the void, its systems stabilizing but its crew shaken, Xelra knew this defeat would linger. It wasn't just a loss, it was a lesson. Humanity's strength lay not in their technology or their numbers, but in their relentless spirit and uncanny ability to find opportunity where others saw only despair. And as Xelra stared into the vastness of space, the flickering stars seemed to echo the children's defiance, a reminder of humanity's capacity to adapt, endure, and inspire. For the first time, she understood that this spark was more than resilience, it was the power to reshape the galaxy itself.